The address the agency sent me doesn't match any normal tutoring job I've ever taken, and I've taken plenty in the 3 years since I started supplementing my interpreter work with private lessons. Most families meet me at community centers or their modest homes in the suburbs where kids bounce on sofas and dogs bark at strangers. But this address leads me 40 minutes outside the city to a neighborhood where the houses hide behind stone walls and iron gates, where old money whispers instead of shouts. My Honda Civic looks ridiculous pulling up to the entrance where a guard station sits like a miniature fortress, and the man inside barely glances at me before checking his tablet and waving me through with an expression that suggests I'm already dismissed as unimportant. The driveway curves through manicured grounds where every tree looks deliberately placed, every hedge trimmed to geometric perfection, and I grip my steering wheel tighter because the fee they offered suddenly makes sense, and that should probably worry me more than it does. I need this job, though. Need it badly enough that I've stopped asking questions about why someone would pay 3 times my normal rate for basic ASL instruction. Stopped wondering why the intake form had so few details beyond the student's first name and age. The mansion that emerges from around a bend in the driveway steals my breath despite my nervousness. All golden stone and tall windows catching the late afternoon November sun, beautiful in the way things are when money is no object and aesthetics matter more than warmth. I park where another guard directs me, and when I step out with my teaching bag slung over my shoulder, the air smells like expensive landscaping and something else I can't quite name, something that makes my skin prickle with awareness that I'm somewhere I don't belong. The guard who greets me at the massive front door is built like he eats smaller men for breakfast, and his suit probably costs more than my monthly rent. And when he tells me that Mr. Moretti values his sister above everything, and I shouldn't disappoint him, the words land like a threat wrapped in professional courtesy. I nod and follow him inside where the foyer alone could fit my entire apartment, where crystal chandeliers catch light and throw rainbows across marble floors, where every surface gleams with the kind of cleanliness that requires a full staff to maintain. He leads me through hallways lined with art that might be real based on the security cameras positioned at careful intervals, up a curved staircase with an iron railing that feels cool under my palm, and I catch glimpses of rooms through open doorways that all look like magazine spreads, beautiful and untouched and somehow sad. We stop at a door at the end of a long hallway, and the guard knocks twice before opening it without waiting for a response. And that's when I understand that whoever lives in this room doesn't get privacy, only surveillance, disguised as protection. The girl sitting in the window seat doesn't turn when we enter, and the room itself feels wrong. Expensive furniture covered in a fine layer of dust, heavy curtains drawn across windows that could let in so much light, the air stale like no one has opened a door or window in weeks. Sofia Moretti is 16 according to my intake form, but she looks younger curled up like that, her dark hair unwashed and pulled into a messy knot, wearing clothes that might have been slept in. And when she finally turns to look at me, her eyes hold the kind of exhausted hostility that comes from people who've given up fighting, but haven't quite given up hating. The guard leaves without introduction, and I'm alone with this girl who radiates, "Don't touch me, don't talk to me, don't try to help me," and I've seen this before in other students, but never quite this intense, never quite this much like staring at someone who's already decided I'm going to fail. I set my bag down carefully and sign hello even though I don't know if she'll understand, even though her arms stay crossed and her jaw stays tight. Because this is what I do. This is the only language I have that might reach past whatever walls she's built. She grabs a notepad from beside her, and her handwriting is angry, all capital letters pressed hard enough to dent the paper beneath. And the note says, "My brother hired you. He wastes money on everyone who says they can fix me. You'll quit like the others." I read it and feel something shift in my chest, that familiar pull toward broken things that my therapist says comes from losing my mother too young, from spending my teenage years trying to fix something unfixable. I sign and speak at the same time, keeping my hands visible and my movements slow, telling her I'm not here to fix her because she's not broken. I'm here to give her a language if she wants it. And I watch her eyes track my hands, even though she's pretending not to care. She writes another note, this one asking how I can teach her a language she can't hear. And there's less anger in this one, just the faintest edge of curiosity hidden under skepticism. I pull out my tablet and show her videos of deaf poets performing in ASL, their hands painting pictures in the air, their faces expressing emotions that transcend sound. And I watch her face soften just slightly, just enough to give me hope. I tell her about my mother who lost her hearing when I was 12, how she taught me that deaf doesn't mean silent, how sign language became our secret code, our private world, the thing that connected us when illness tried to separate us. Sofia's eyes meet mine for the first time, really meet mine, and I see grief there that matches my own, and I wonder what happened to this girl to trap her in this beautiful prison. I sign, beautiful sister, the movements graceful and sure, even though she's not looking anymore, even though she's turned back to the window, because I want her to know that I see her, really see her, not the tragedy or the challenge or the project her brother is paying me to fix. What I don't know, what I can't see, is the man standing in the doorway behind me, his presence so still and controlled that I don't feel watched, even though I absolutely am. Later I'll learn that Dante Moretti makes a habit of observing without being observed, that stillness is one of his most dangerous qualities. But right now I'm focused on Sofia, on the way her shoulders have relaxed just half an inch, on the possibility that maybe this time I can actually help. I spend the next hour showing her basic signs, not pushing when she refuses to try them herself, just exposing her to the beauty of the language, to the possibility of communication beyond angry notes and isolation. When I finally pack up my bag and tell her I'll be back in 2 days, she doesn't respond, but she doesn't tell me not to come either. And in my world, that counts as progress. The guard who escorts me out is different from the one who brought me in, younger and somehow less threatening, and he tells me that Mr. Moretti appreciates my time and that payment will be processed through the agency. I walk back through those perfect hallways feeling like I've just survived something, though I couldn't say exactly what. And it's not until I'm in my car driving back toward the city that I realize my hands are shaking slightly on the steering wheel. The sun is setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seem too beautiful for how unsettled I feel. And I tell myself the unease is just about the wealth, the obvious security, the sense that this family has secrets that have nothing to do with me. I tell myself that the job is simple: teach a traumatized girl to communicate, take the generous payment that will finally let me pay down another chunk of my mother's medical debt, and don't ask questions about why a 16-year-old girl lives in a fortress or why her brother can afford to pay me like I'm teaching royalty. But driving home through traffic that feels normal and real and safely ordinary, I can't shake the image of Sofia's grief-stricken eyes or the weight of being watched by someone I never even saw. And some instinct I should probably listen to whispers that I've just walked into something far more complicated than a tutoring job, something that might change everything if I'm not careful. I ignore that instinct because I need the money, and because Sofia needs help, and because some part of me that never learned to leave broken things alone is already invested in reaching that girl who's trapped herself in silence. And by the time I pull into my apartment complex parking lot, I've convinced myself that whatever danger I sensed was just my imagination, just nerves about working for people so far above my social class that we might as well live in different worlds. What I don't know yet, what I can't possibly know, is that the man who watched me from that doorway has already decided something about me, has already begun learning the language I speak with my hands, has already started a kind of observation that will tangle all our lives together in ways I couldn't predict even if I tried. 3 weeks into teaching Sofia, and I've stopped pretending this is just another job, stopped lying to myself that I'm maintaining professional distance when I spend my evenings planning lessons specifically designed to crack through her walls. When I wake up thinking about new ways to make language accessible to a girl who's been living in self-imposed isolation for 2 years. She's still difficult, still pretends indifference when I arrive for our sessions every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon, but I've started noticing small changes that fill me with a hope I probably shouldn't feel this intensely about a student. The first time I arrived and saw her curtains pulled back just an inch, letting weak November sunlight into that tomb of a room, I had to hide my smile because I knew she'd done it for me, knew she was starting to anticipate my visits, even if she'd never admit it. By the second week, she's waiting by the window when I pull up, and though she moves away quickly when she sees me looking, I catch the ghost of something on her face that might become excitement if I'm patient enough. I've learned to bring different tools to each session because traditional teaching won't work with Sofia, won't reach past the anger and grief she's wrapped around herself like armor. Today, I brought a small speaker that I place on the floor between us, playing music with heavy bass that creates vibrations she can feel through the hardwood, and I sign the lyrics while the beat pulses through both of us, showing her how language can be felt and seen even without sound. She watches my hands with an intensity that makes my chest tight, and when I guide her fingers into the sign for music, her hand trembles slightly in mine before she pulls away, but she doesn't write an angry note telling me to stop, doesn't retreat to her window seat, and that counts as victory. I talk while I sign, explaining that anger is good, that anger means she cares, that anger means she's fighting, and I tell her I'd rather have her anger than her silence, because at least anger is alive. At least anger is feeling something. Her eyes meet mine, and there's such raw pain there that I almost look away. But I don't, because looking away feels like abandoning her, and I've been abandoned enough in my life to know exactly how that feels. What I don't know, what I can't possibly see, is that every single session is being watched by dark eyes that never miss a detail. That in an office 2 floors below us, a man sits surrounded by monitors and paperwork he's ignoring, canceling meetings his second-in-command Marco has scheduled because nothing seems as important as watching me teach his sister to communicate again. Dante Moretti has turned observation into an art form over the years, learned that knowledge is power and secrets are currency. But watching Maya work with Sofia feels different from gathering intelligence or assessing threats. He studies the way her face lights up when Sofia attempts a sign, the patience in her movements when Sofia gets frustrated, the gentleness in her touch when she guides Sofia's hands into correct positions, and something in his carefully controlled chest cracks open just slightly, just enough to let in light he didn't know he'd been missing. He started learning sign language himself, spending late nights after his business is concluded, watching online videos, practicing signs in the privacy of his office, where no one can see their boss doing something as soft as learning a language just to connect with his sister. Marco notices the obsession, notices their boss watching monitors when he should be reviewing shipment schedules or meeting with contacts, notices the way Dante's jaw tightens when Maya's car pulls away each session. But Marco has worked for the Moretti family long enough to know when to speak and when to stay silent. The background check Marco runs on Maya Chen reveals things that make Dante's interest shift from professional concern to something more dangerous, more personal. He learns about her mother Elena, who died when Maya was 19, about the massive medical debt that forced Maya to abandon her PhD program in linguistics, about the way she's been paying down that debt for 9 years while working 2 jobs and still finding time to volunteer at deaf community centers. He learns that she lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that's not quite dangerous but close enough to make him uncomfortable, that she drives a car with 160,000 miles on it, that she owns exactly 3 nice outfits that she rotates for professional meetings. He learns that she's alone in the world, no siblings, no father who bothered to stick around when things got hard, and something possessive and protective rises in him that has no place in his world, no place in the life of a man who's built an empire on violence and control. During the 3rd week, during the 9th session, something shifts in Sofia that Dante witnesses from his doorway, where he started standing. Instead of watching through cameras, because he needs to see this in person, needs to be close even if Maya doesn't know he's there. Maya has brought modeling clay today, and she's teaching Sofia words through texture and creation, signing while Sofia shapes the clay into objects, connecting physical sensation with visual language. They've been working for an hour when Sofia suddenly stops, her hands covered in clay, and she looks at Maya with such intensity that even from the doorway Dante can feel the moment building towards something significant. Sofia's hands move slowly, hesitantly, forming signs that Maya has taught her over weeks of patient repetition. And when her fingers finally spell out, "I am angry," when she strings together her first complete sentence in sign language, the dam breaks and she's crying, sobbing like she hasn't let herself cry since the car bombing that killed their parents and stole her hearing. Maya doesn't hesitate, doesn't maintain professional distance or appropriate boundaries. She just pulls Sofia into her arms and holds her, while the girl shakes with 2 years of suppressed grief, and she signs into Sofia's hair that it's okay, that anger is allowed, that feeling anything is better than the numbness Sofia has been living in. Dante watches this and feels something crack in his own chest, feels his carefully constructed walls develop fissures he spent years reinforcing, and when his vision blurs slightly, he realizes with shock that he's close to tears himself, something he hasn't allowed since the day he became boss at 24 and learned that emotion is weakness in his world. He leaves before they can see him, retreating to his office where he sits in darkness and admits to himself that Maya Chen has become dangerous, not because she threatens his business or his power, but because she threatens something far more essential, threatens the control he's maintained over his own heart for years. He tells Marco to increase her payment, to make sure umbrellas are waiting when November rain starts falling, to ensure her car gets mysteriously tuned up and serviced. Small gestures of care he can't give openly, but can't seem to stop himself from arranging. Marco looks at him with knowing eyes and says nothing, but that night warns him that the Bratva has noticed his distraction, that enemies are always watching for weakness, that caring about someone outside the family makes them vulnerable. Dante knows this, has always known this, but he can't seem to make himself stop watching Maya's sessions, can't stop learning the language she speaks with her hands, can't stop wanting to know everything about the woman who's bringing his sister back to life. The hallway encounter happens by accident and design, Dante positioning himself to be leaving his office exactly when Maya finishes her session, timing it so their paths cross naturally, even though nothing he does is ever truly natural or unplanned. She nearly walks into him, distracted and glowing from Sofia's breakthrough, and when she looks up, her eyes widen with something that might be recognition, even though they've never officially met. He introduces himself as Sofia's brother, apologizes for being away on business, thanks her for working with Sofia, and lies smoothly about not realizing how much progress they'd made. Up close, she's smaller than she seems on the monitors, barely reaching his shoulder, with eyes that shift between brown and gold, depending on the light, and a mouth that looks soft even when she's nervous. She's nervous now, he can tell, can see the way her pulse jumps in her throat, the way her hands fidget with her bag, strap, and he wonders if she feels it too, this pull between them that makes no logical sense, but exists anyway. He tells her she's the first person his sister has let touch her in 2 years, tells her whatever she's doing she should keep doing it, and his voice comes out rougher than he intended, weighted with emotion he usually keeps locked away. Her response is professional, warm, talking about Sofia's natural intelligence and capacity for language, but her eyes keep darting to his face like she's trying to solve a puzzle, and he realizes with dark amusement that she's as drawn to him as he is to her, even though she probably wishes she wasn't. His eyes are the darkest brown I've ever seen, almost black, and they're looking at me like I'm a puzzle he's determined to solve, and I feel heat rise in my face that has nothing to do with the temperature in this hallway. Dante Moretti is handsome in a way that feels dangerous, all sharp cheekbones and strong jaw, and a mouth that looks like it rarely smiles, dressed in a suit that probably costs more than 6 months of my rent, And when he looks at me, I feel simultaneously seen and exposed, like he knows things about me I haven't told anyone. The conversation lasts maybe 3 minutes, but feels longer, stretches out in that weird way time does when you're hyper aware of someone's proximity, of the expensive scent of their cologne, of the way their voice sounds like whiskey and smoke. When I finally escape to my car, my hands are shaking again, and I tell myself it's just the adrenaline from Sofia's breakthrough, just the emotional intensity of holding a crying teenager while she grieved, but I know I'm lying to myself about why my heart is racing. I drive home through rain that started falling while I was inside, and I notice for the first time that someone left an umbrella in my car, expensive and black with a weight to it that suggests quality I can't afford, and I wonder when it appeared, who put it there, why someone in that house is taking care of me in small, invisible ways. My apartment feels especially small and cluttered when I get home. Stacks of bills on the counter next to student loan statements, and payment plans for debt that will take another decade to clear, my secondhand furniture and thrift store clothes, the gap between my world and the Moretti mansion so vast it might as well be unbridgeable. I heat up leftover pasta and try to grade some interpretation assignments, but my mind keeps drifting back to Sofia's breakthrough, to the feeling of her crying in my arms, to the way her brother looked at me like he was memorizing my face. I tell myself to be professional, to maintain boundaries, to remember that this is just a job, no matter how well it pays or how invested I'm becoming. But I'm already too far gone, already thinking about Sofia like she's mine to protect, already replaying the sound of Dante's voice in my head, already wanting things I have no business wanting from people who live in a different universe than mine. The family business comment slips out during our 5th week of lessons when Sofia is signing about wanting to go to college someday, about studying art or design, and she signs that her brother says she can do anything she wants, that the family business will support whatever dreams she has, and the moment the words leave her hands, her face goes pale and her eyes dart to the door like she expects someone to burst in and punish her for speaking. I ask her what family business, keeping my voice casual and my signs relaxed. But she's already retreating, shaking her head and writing on her notepad that it doesn't matter, that she shouldn't have mentioned it, please forget she said anything. The fear in her eyes plants a seed of unease that grows during my entire drive home, and for the first time in 5 weeks, I pull out my phone and type Dante Moretti into the search bar. And what loads on my screen makes my blood run cold in a way that has nothing to do with the December wind rattling my car windows. Article after article about the Moretti crime family, about money laundering investigations that never quite stick, about territorial disputes and mysterious disappearances, about a car bombing 2 years ago that killed Vincent and Maria Moretti and critically injured their 16-year-old daughter who was in the vehicle with them. I read about how Dante took over the family operations at 24 when his father died, how he's consolidated power across the city, how law enforcement has tried and failed to build cases against him for everything from racketeering to murder. There are photos of him in expensive suits leaving courtrooms, his face blank and cold, looking nothing like the man who spoke to me in that hallway, with something almost vulnerable in his dark eyes. I sit in my parked car outside my apartment building, reading until my phone battery drops to 15%, until the words blur together into a picture I can't ignore, until I have to face the fact that I've been teaching sign language to the sister of a Mafia boss, that I've been developing feelings for a man who's probably killed people, that I've walked into something so far beyond my understanding that I don't even know how to process it. I spend the entire night not sleeping, staring at my ceiling, trying to reconcile the Dante from the articles with the man who learned sign language in secret to connect with his sister, the criminal with the brother who looked at me like I was something precious. By morning, I've convinced myself that I need to quit, that staying means accepting a world I want no part of, that I can't let myself care about Sofia or her brother when that caring might cost me everything. The email I send to the agency is professional and brief, citing scheduling conflicts and personal matters, requesting they find Sofia a new instructor, and hitting send feels like tearing something vital out of my chest. But I do it anyway because staying feels more dangerous than leaving. For 2 days, I hear nothing, and I tell myself that silence is acceptance, that they've found someone else, that I can go back to my normal life of interpretation work and waitressing shifts, and pretending my heart doesn't ache every time I think about Sofia's breakthrough or Dante's eyes. The diner where I work my second job is in a neighborhood that's gotten rougher in recent years. But the owner pays cash under the table and doesn't ask questions about my schedule, and I've been closing shifts there for 3 years without incident. So when my manager asks if I can stay late to cover for someone who called in sick, I agree without thinking about it. By the time I'm walking to my car, it's past midnight, the parking lot poorly lit and empty except for a few employee vehicles, and I'm fishing for my keys in my purse when I hear footsteps behind me that are too deliberate, too purposeful, moving too fast. I turn and see 3 men, and in that split second before they reach me, I know with absolute certainty that this isn't a random mugging, that they've been waiting for me, that this has something to do with Dante and the world I tried to leave. The biggest one grabs me before I can scream, his hand over my mouth smelling like cigarettes and violence, and another one hisses in accented English that I need to come quietly, or this gets much worse, and I'm being dragged toward a van with tinted windows while my mind screams at my body to fight. But terror has frozen me useless. They throw me into the back of the van and one of them says, "Tell Moretti his sister is next. This is just a warning." And I understand then that I'm not the target. I'm the message. That these men are using me to hurt Dante, and that means they know about me, have been watching me, saw me as a vulnerability before I even knew I was one. The van starts moving, and I'm pressed between 2 men who smell like sweat and danger, and one of them is talking on a phone in Russian, and I can't understand the words, but I understand the tone, the satisfaction of a job going according to plan. I don't know how long we drive, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. Time does strange things when you're terrified, but suddenly, there's a crash of metal on metal, and the van is spinning, and I'm thrown against the wall, and then everything happens so fast I can barely track it. Gunfire, screaming, the van doors ripping open, and then Dante is there, surrounded by men in dark clothes, and the violence that follows is something my brain can't fully process, can't reconcile with anything I've ever experienced in my safe suburban life. I see Dante move like violence is a language he's fluent in, see him put a gun to the head of the man who grabbed me first, see him pull the trigger without hesitation when that man tries to use me as a shield, and the sound is so loud in the confined space that my ears ring and I can't hear anything except a high-pitched whine. Then Dante is lifting me out of the van, his hands surprisingly gentle for someone who just killed a man 3 feet away from me, and he's carrying me to a black car that appeared from nowhere, and I'm shaking so hard my teeth are chattering, shock setting in fast and brutal. He puts me in the back seat and slides in next to me, and when he touches my face to check for injuries, his hands are shaking too, and that detail breaks through my shock more than anything else. The fact that this controlled, dangerous man is trembling while he runs his fingers over my cheekbones, my jaw, my arms, checking for broken bones or bleeding. He asks if I'm hurt, and my voice won't work, comes out as a broken sob instead of words, and he pulls me against his chest, and I should be terrified of him, should be more afraid of the man who just killed someone in front of me than I was of my kidnappers. But instead, I'm clinging to his suit jacket, while he murmurs something in Italian that sounds like a prayer or a curse. The drive to the mansion passes in a blur of shock and adrenaline, and Dante is talking on his phone in a voice I've never heard from him before, cold and deadly, ordering his men to find every one of them, to burn down whatever hole they're hiding in, to send a message that will echo through the Bratva ranks for years. When we pull up to the mansion, it's lit up like a fortress under siege, security everywhere, medical staff waiting, and Sofia is there in her pajamas looking terrified, and when she sees my torn shirt and the bruises already forming on my arms, she signs, "Are you okay?" with such clear concern that I start crying again because this girl who barely communicated 3 weeks ago is asking about me, caring about me, seeing me as someone worth worrying about. I sign back that I'm okay, even though I'm not sure that's true. And Sofia looks at her brother and signs, "Is she safe?" And I realize with a jolt that Dante understands her, that he's learned the language I've been teaching, that he's been studying in secret all this time. He signs back, "Yes, she's safe now, I promise." And there's such fierce protectiveness in his face that something in my chest cracks open, despite everything, despite the violence I just witnessed, despite knowing what he is and what he's done. They take me to a room that's not the guest wing, but somewhere else, somewhere in the family quarters. And there's a doctor who checks me over while Dante stands in the doorway, watching like he's physically incapable of leaving. And the doctor says I'm remarkably uninjured, just bruises and shock, that I should rest and let the adrenaline work its way out of my system. When everyone leaves and it's just me and Dante in this beautiful room that smells like expensive linens and his cologne, he sits on the edge of the bed and asks why I tried to leave, why I sent that email, and his voice is rough like he's been screaming even though I know he hasn't. I tell him the truth because lying seems pointless now. Tell him I didn't know what he was, what he is, that I Googled him and found articles about crime and violence and a world I don't understand. He's quiet for a long moment, and then he says, "And now you do, and you're more afraid of me than you were of them." And there's such pain in his voice that I find myself responding honestly, saying, "No, I'm afraid of what it means that I'm not. That I should be terrified of him, but instead I felt safer in his arms than I felt anywhere." He tells me then about the car bombing, about watching his parents die and his sister lose her hearing, about the guilt that consumes him because Sofia was only in that car because he was supposed to pick her up from school but sent them instead, about his vow to protect her at all costs, no matter what it takes. He tells me that the Bratva has been trying to move into his territory for months, that they saw me as a weakness, that leaving wouldn't have made me safer because they'd already identified me as someone he cares about. He tells me that quitting now means abandoning Sofia to silence again, means walking away from the only person who's been able to reach her in 2 years, and he says he'll understand if I choose to leave, but he needs me to know that I'm in danger either way now. That the only real safety is staying close where he can protect me. I should tell him no, should insist on going back to my life, should run from this man and his violence and his dangerous world, but when I look into his dark eyes, I see the same thing I saw in Sofia: pain and isolation and a desperate need for connection. And I realize I'm already too invested to walk away even if I wanted to. I tell him I need time to think, to process, to understand what staying would mean. And he nods and tells me to rest, that we'll talk more when I'm not in shock, that for tonight I'm safe and that's all that matters. He stands to leave, and I catch his hand without thinking. And when he looks back at me, there's such naked hope in his face that it takes my breath away, and I realize that this powerful, dangerous man is just as lost as his sister, just as desperate for someone to see past the violence to the person underneath. The room they give me is in the family wing, and that detail matters more than the expensive furniture or the view of snow-covered gardens. Matters because it means Dante is claiming me as his in some way that has nothing to do with protection and everything to do with possession. And I should probably object to that, but I don't, because some part of me wants to be claimed, wants to belong somewhere after years of being alone. For 10 days I live in his world and watch the mansion transform from fortress to something that almost feels like home. Fresh flowers appearing on tables, where before there was only cold perfection, music playing softly through speakers, because Sofia can feel the vibrations and it makes her smile. The whole house somehow lighter, because there's life in it now instead of just expensive emptiness. The lessons with Sofia continue, but everything is different now. Dante's sitting in the corner of her room, openly watching instead of hiding behind cameras, and Sofia blooms under the attention of both of us, her signing becoming more fluid and confident, her silent laughter filling the room when I tell jokes in ASL, or when we make mistakes that turn signs into accidentally hilarious meanings. She's using sign language as her primary communication now, even when she's alone with Dante. And I watch them sign good morning to each other over breakfast and see his hands form. I'm proud of you when she masters a difficult phrase, and these moments crack something open in my chest because this dangerous man is so incredibly gentle with his sister, so patient and loving in ways that contradict everything the articles said about him. One afternoon, we teach Sofia to bake cookies. The three of us crowded in the massive kitchen that probably hasn't seen this much mess in years, flour covering every surface, and Sofia's hair and somehow my face. And she's signing recipe instructions, while Dante and I both try to follow them. And when the cookies come out burned on the bottom, she laughs so hard she has to sit down, her whole body shaking with silent mirth, and Dante and I lock eyes over her head and smile at each other like we've just witnessed a miracle. Because it is a miracle, this girl who wouldn't communicate at all 2 months ago is now joking about our terrible baking skills, is teasing her brother in sign language about how someone who runs an empire can't manage to not burn cookies, is present and alive in ways that seemed impossible when I first met her. Sofia signs to me later when Dante is on a phone call dealing with business. Signs that her brother smiles now, that he's different with me here, that she hasn't seen him this relaxed since before their parents died. And I don't know what to say to that, so I just hug her and she hugs me back and signs, "Thank you for coming, thank you for staying, thank you for being family." After Sofia goes to bed each night, Dante and I fall into a pattern of meeting in his study, a room that smells like leather and old books, and the whiskey he pours himself while making me tea because he's noticed I don't drink alcohol. And we talk for hours about everything and nothing, peeling back layers until we're both exposed in ways that feel more intimate than physical touch. He tells me about his childhood, about a father who was preparing him for this life from age 10, teaching him that emotion is weakness and violence is just another tool, about a mother who tried to soften those lessons but couldn't quite overcome her husband's influence. He tells me about becoming boss at 24, about the weight of suddenly being responsible for dozens of families who depend on the Moretti organization for their livelihoods, about decisions he's had to make that still wake him up at night. He tells me about the guilt that eats at him every single day because Sofia was only in that car because he was supposed to pick her up from school, but sent his parents instead because he had a meeting that couldn't be rescheduled, about how he replays that choice over and over, wondering if he could have done something different. I tell him about my mother's diagnosis when I was 12, about watching her deteriorate over 7 years, while medical bills piled up faster than we could pay them, about the choice between finishing my PhD in linguistics or taking care of her in her final months, about how that choice wasn't really a choice at all. I tell him about the debt that's defined my adult life, about working 2 jobs and still barely making progress, about the isolation of being the only person who understood my mother's signing toward the end when she was too weak to speak, about losing her and feeling like I lost my purpose along with her. He tells me about the parts of his world I need to understand to stay safe, about the territorial disputes and old grudges that fuel violence in his business, about the Bratva's push into his territory and why they see him as an obstacle to be removed. He explains the rules that govern his world, the codes and hierarchies that seem archaic but keep chaos at bay. And I listen and ask questions and try to reconcile this thoughtful man explaining complex politics with the man who killed someone to save me. I teach him advanced sign language during these nights, sitting close on the leather couch while I guide his hands through complicated phrases, and the touch becomes charged with something electric that neither of us acknowledges directly, but both of us feel. He's a quick learner, picks up nuance and subtlety faster than most students, and when I compliment his progress, he looks almost shy, this powerful man reduced to something boyish by simple praise. The tension between us builds with every conversation, every accidental touch, every moment when our eyes meet and hold for too long. And I know we're both fighting it, both trying to maintain some boundary that's already been crossed emotionally, even if not physically. I see him coming back from business sometimes with tension in his shoulders and exhaustion in his eyes, once with what might have been blood on his shirt cuff that he changed before Sofia could see. And these glimpses of his other life remind me that this domestic bubble we're living in isn't reality. That outside these walls, he's still the man from those articles, still capable of violence I can't imagine. But then he signs goodnight to Sofia with such tenderness, or brings me tea made exactly how I like it without me asking, or listens to stories about my mother with complete attention, like my grief matters to him, and I can't reconcile the different versions of him into one coherent picture, so I stop trying and just let him be complicated. Winter has settled over the city, snow falling almost daily now, and from the mansion windows I can see Christmas lights going up across the distant neighborhoods. Normal families preparing for normal holidays, while I'm living in this strange suspended reality with a mafia boss and his sister. The night everything changes starts with a lesson where Sofia signs, "I love you" to me spontaneously, without prompting, just after we finish reading a story together in ASL, and then she turns to Dante and signs, "I love you" to him too, and I see his eyes go bright with tears he won't let fall. See him sign it back with hands that tremble slightly. After Sofia goes to bed, Dante walks me to my room like he does every night. And we stand in the hallway outside my door in that awkward moment where neither of us wants to say goodnight, and something in the air feels different, charged with all the things we've been not saying for 10 days. He tells me this is a mistake, that he's pulling me into darkness, but even as he says it, he's moving closer, and I tell him maybe I'm pulling him toward light, and then he's kissing me and the world narrows to just his mouth on mine, his hands in my hair, the way he tastes like whiskey and want. He pulls back after a moment, apologizing, saying he shouldn't have done that I deserve better than a man with blood on his hands. But I'm the one who pulls him back this time, who makes the choice to cross this line, who opens my door and lets him follow me inside. What happens next is tender and intense, and nothing like I expected. This dangerous man touching me like I'm something precious, learning my body the way he learned sign language, with complete focus and patience. Afterward, we lie tangled together, and he traces patterns on my skin while I play with his hair, and we don't talk about what this means or where it goes from here. We just exist in this moment where the complications don't matter, and we're just two people who found something unexpected. He stays until almost dawn, then kisses me softly and returns to his own room before Sofia wakes up. And I lie in bed watching early morning light filter through curtains and wonder what I've gotten myself into. Wonder if I've just made the best or worst decision of my life. The next morning, Sofia takes one look at me, and then at her brother, and signs with a knowing smile that he looks happy, that I look happy, that maybe we're not as subtle as we think we are. And I blush while Dante tries to maintain his composure, but fails because Sofia is teasing him mercilessly in ASL about how he's been obvious for weeks. The days that follow fall into a new rhythm, lessons with Sofia during the day, stolen moments with Dante when we can find them, family dinners where the three of us sit together and sign and laugh and feel like something real instead of something temporary. But Marco keeps bringing reports about Bratva movements, about increased surveillance on the mansion, about chatter suggesting they're planning something bigger, and I can see the worry building in Dante's eyes even as he tries to hide it from Sofia and me. He's pulled away for business more often, coming back tense and distant, and I know the bubble we've been living in can't last forever. That reality is pressing in from all sides. One night he tells me that his enemies have noticed I'm here, that keeping me close was supposed to protect me but might have just painted a bigger target on my back, and I can see he's second-guessing everything, wondering if he should send me away, even though we both know it's too late for that. I tell him I'm not going anywhere, that I chose this with my eyes open, that I'd rather be in danger with him than safe without him, and he holds me so tight it almost hurts and whispers in Italian against my hair, words I don't understand but feel anyway. I know this can't last. Know that something is coming that will test everything we've built. But for now, I let myself believe in this impossible family we're creating, in the possibility that love might be enough to bridge the gap between our worlds, in the hope that maybe we can find a way through the darkness into something like light. The attack happens on a Tuesday afternoon while I'm teaching Sofia about metaphorical signs, showing her how ASL can express abstract concepts through movement and space. And we're both laughing because she just signed something that accidentally means ridiculous elephant instead of important decision, when the first explosion shakes the windows, and her face goes from joy to terror in a heartbeat. Security alarms start screaming through the house, and I hear gunfire, actual gunfire echoing through the halls, and my brain can't process what's happening fast enough because this was supposed to be safe. Dante promised we were safe here. Sofia's eyes are wide with panic, and I can see her starting to retreat into that frozen state I remember from our first meeting. And I grab her hand and sign run to the safe room, but she's not moving. She's paralyzed with fear and memories of the last time she heard explosions. And I can hear men shouting in Russian getting closer to our location. I make a split-second decision and pull her toward her bathroom instead, because it's closer and has a lock. And she comes with me, stumbling and shaking, and we barely get the door locked before I hear boots in her bedroom, hear things being overturned and smashed. The bathroom is small and dark once I turn off the lights, and Sofia is pressed against me, trembling so hard I can feel it through my whole body. And I sign in the darkness, even though I'm not sure she can see my hands, sign I've got you, you're safe, I promise. And she signs back, don't leave me, and I sign, never, never, I'm right here. For 8 minutes that feel like hours, we hide while gunfire echoes through the mansion, and I hear men shouting and glass shattering, and at one point, someone tries the bathroom door handle, and my heart stops completely, but then there's more gunfire and shouting and the person moves away. Sofia signs, I'm scared, and I sign me too, but we're brave together, and I hold her and try to keep my own terror under control, because if I fall apart, she'll fall apart, and we need to stay quiet and hidden until help comes. I don't know if help is coming, don't know if Dante even knows what's happening, don't know if we're going to die in this bathroom that smells like expensive soap and our fear. But I keep signing comforting words to Sofia and praying to a God I'm not sure I believe in that we survive this. Then I hear a voice I recognize, Dante shouting orders in Italian, and the gunfire intensifies for a moment, and then stops. And there's an eerie silence that's somehow worse than the noise. I wait, not sure if it's safe, and then Dante is calling our names, and I unlock the bathroom door with shaking hands, and he's there, covered in other people's blood, his eyes wild until he sees us, and then he's pulling us both into his arms, and I can feel him shaking too. The mansion looks like a war zone, shattered glass everywhere, bullet holes in walls that yesterday were perfect, blood on the marble floors that someone died creating, and I see 2 bodies being carried out by Dante's men, 2 people who worked here and are now dead because of an attack that was meant for us. Sofia is clinging to me and won't let go, won't look at anyone, has retreated so far into herself that she's not even signing, and I can see months of progress evaporating in front of my eyes. Dante is talking in rapid Italian to Marco, his second in command, and I catch enough words to understand they've caught someone, that there was a traitor inside, and Dante's face when he says the name Vincent is pure murder. They bring Vincent to Dante's office, and I shouldn't follow, but I do. Some instinct telling me I need to see this, need to understand what Dante is capable of when his control breaks. Vincent is on his knees, bleeding from somewhere, and he's babbling about gambling debts and the Bratva threatening his family, about how he didn't have a choice, and Dante listens with a face like carved stone. When Vincent finishes his excuses, Dante asks in a voice colder than I've ever heard from him to give him one reason why he should live, why he shouldn't be tortured and killed for putting Sofia and Maya in danger. And I can see in his eyes that he means it, that he's going to do terrible things to this man and feel justified doing them. Vincent is crying now, begging, and Dante pulls out a gun, and I hear myself saying his name, saying please don't, saying Sofia doesn't need to see more death, because I'm asking you not to. He looks at me, and for a moment I don't recognize him. This is the man from the articles, the crime boss who's killed dozens, and I'm terrified not of what he might do to me, but of watching him become the monster he's been trying not to be around us. Something in my voice or my face reaches him, though, some thread of connection that's stronger than his rage, and he lowers the gun and tells Marco to exile Vincent to make sure everyone knows he's marked. That crossing the Moretti family means death even if it comes slowly. Vincent is dragged away, and then it's just me and Dante in this office with a fire roaring in the fireplace, but the room feels frozen, and I'm shaking from adrenaline crash and the reality of what almost happened. He tells me I should leave, go back to my life, that this was always going to end badly, and I can hear him starting to build walls between us, starting to push me away because that's what he does when he's scared. I tell him he's pushing me away to protect me, but I'm not a child. I chose this. I chose him. And he turns on me with anger that's really fear and says, "Then you chose wrong. Look at Sofia. She's worse because of the danger I brought to her door, because of you being here." The words hit like a slap, and I know he doesn't mean them. Know he's lashing out because he's terrified and feeling guilty, but they hurt anyway because there's truth in them. Sofia is traumatized again, our sanctuary has been violated, and I don't know how to fix any of it. I tell him it's not fair to blame me for this, and he says nothing about this is fair. And then Marco knocks and says they need him, and Dante leaves without looking back at me. I go to check on Sofia and find her in her room that's been torn apart by the attack, curtains ripped down, furniture overturned, and she's sitting in the corner where her window seat used to be, not responding when I sign to her, not making eye contact, back to being that frozen girl I met months ago. I sit with her, and eventually she lets me hold her, but she won't communicate, won't sign, and I can feel her retreating to that place of safety that's really just isolation. And my heart breaks because I thought we'd moved past this, thought she was healed enough to withstand setbacks. But trauma doesn't work that way. Healing isn't linear, and sometimes you have to start over from the beginning. That night, I don't see Dante at all. He's locked in his office dealing with the aftermath, and I sleep in Sofia's room on the floor next to her bed because she won't let me leave. And every time I close my eyes, I see gunfire and blood and Dante's face when he was ready to kill. The next morning, Marco finds me and says Dante wants to talk, and I follow him to the office where Dante looks like he hasn't slept, looks 10 years older than he did yesterday, and he tells me he's made arrangements for me to go back to my apartment with protection, that staying here is too dangerous, that he can't guarantee my safety anymore. I tell him that's not his decision to make, that I'm staying because Sofia needs me and because I'm not abandoning them, and he says I'm being stubborn and foolish and I don't understand the reality of his world. I tell him I understand perfectly. I understand that loving him means accepting violence and danger, means living with fear, means never feeling completely safe, and I'm choosing it anyway, because the alternative is walking away from the only family I've had since my mother died. He looks at me with such pain in his eyes and says he's poison to everyone he loves, that his parents died because of him, Sofia lost her hearing because of him, and now I'm in danger because of him. And maybe everyone would be better off if he just disappeared. I cross the room and take his face in my hands and tell him he's not allowed to play martyr, not allowed to make decisions for me about what risks I'm willing to take, and that if he pushes me away, I'll just keep coming back until he accepts that I'm staying. We stand there looking at each other, and I can see him warring with himself, wanting to believe me, but terrified of what wanting me might cost. And then Marco knocks again with more urgent business, and the moment breaks. The days after the attack blur together in a haze of heightened security and Sofia's regression and Dante's emotional withdrawal, and I watch our fragile family unit crack under the pressure of reality. Sofia won't sign, barely eats, sleeps fitfully, and wakes up crying silently, and nothing I do seems to reach her the way it did before. Dante buries himself in business, in tracking down every Bratva connection, in fortifying security until the mansion feels like a prison again, and when I see him, he's distant and cold, like he's deliberately trying to make me hate him, so I'll leave. Christmas decorations are still up throughout the house, and they look obscene now against the backdrop of bullet holes and boarded windows, cheerful lights mocking the darkness we're living in. Marco tells me privately that sending me away won't make me safer, that the Bratva knows about me now, that the only real safety is staying close where Dante can protect me. But I don't think Dante is ready to hear that. Don't think he can forgive himself enough to let me stay. 1 week after the attack, I find Sofia in her destroyed room, holding a framed photo of her parents, and when she sees me, she finally signs something. Signs, "Why does everyone I love get hurt?" And I don't have an answer that makes sense, so I just hold her and sign that love is worth the hurt, that connection is worth the risk, that isolation might feel safer, but it's just another kind of death. She looks at me with her mother's eyes and signs, "Do you really believe that?" And I realize I do, that despite everything I've seen and experienced in Dante's world, I still believe love matters more than safety, still believe that the family we've created is worth fighting for, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. I sign, "Yes, I believe it," and she signs, "Then why is my brother pushing you away?" And I don't have an answer for that either, except that sometimes people hurt themselves to avoid hurting others. Sometimes fear looks like strength, and protection looks like rejection. That night, Dante finally comes to my room, the first time I've seen him alone since the attack, and he looks exhausted and defeated and so incredibly sad that I want to gather him up and promise him everything will be okay, even though I can't. He tells me he's been working on something, a way to end this permanently, a deal that will get us out of this life. But it's going to take time, and until then I'm in danger just by being near him. I tell him I don't care about the danger, and he says that's the problem, that I should care, that normal people care about staying alive, and I'm acting like love is enough to protect us when it's not. I tell him maybe love isn't enough, but it's all we have, and he kisses me like he's saying goodbye, even though I'm still standing right in front of him, and then he leaves, and I'm alone again, wondering if loving Dante Moretti is going to destroy me, or save me, or somehow do both at once. Leaving the mansion feels like tearing off my own skin, but I do it anyway, because Dante made it clear he thinks I'll be safer away from him. Because Sofia has retreated so far into herself that I'm not sure I'm helping anymore. Because sometimes loving people means giving them space, even when every instinct screams to stay and fight. My apartment feels impossibly small after weeks in the mansion, the walls closing in, and the silence is oppressive in a way it never was before, because now I know what it sounds like when Sofia laughs silently, or when Dante moves through a room with that controlled grace of his. I tell myself this is the right choice, that going back to my normal life of interpretation work and waitressing shifts is what responsible adults do when they accidentally fall in love with mafia bosses. But the words ring hollow even in my own head. For 4 days, I try to convince myself I made the right decision. Going through the motions of my old routine, picking up shifts at the diner, accepting interpretation jobs, sleeping in my own bed that feels too empty, eating meals alone that taste like nothing. I don't notice the car that's always parked on my street with someone inside. Don't realize that Dante has assigned protection even though he's maintaining distance. Don't understand that his version of letting me go still includes making sure I'm safe. On the 4th day, I come home from a waitressing shift to find a notification on my phone, a video message from an unknown number, and when I open it, my heart stops because it's Sofia using a video relay service with an interpreter, which means she learned how to use technology I didn't teach her, means she's advocating for herself in ways that show growth even in the midst of trauma. The interpreter voices what Sofia signs, and her message is simple and devastating. "Please come back. I need you. He needs you too." And I watch her sign with tears running down my face, because this girl who wouldn't communicate at all 4 months ago is now using every tool available to reach me, is fighting for her family, in a way that makes me realize running isn't protecting anyone, it's just abandoning them when they need me most. I watch the video 3 more times, And then I'm grabbing my keys and driving back to the mansion, not even bothering to pack a bag, because this isn't a visit, this is coming home. And I don't care that it's almost midnight or that I'm still wearing my diner uniform that smells like grease and coffee. The security guards at the gate recognize me and try to stop me, saying Mr. Moretti didn't authorize my entry. But I tell them I don't need his authorization and I drive through anyway, and they must radio ahead because by the time I reach the house, Marco is waiting at the door. He looks at me with something like relief in his eyes and tells me Dante is in his office. Hasn't left it in 2 days. Isn't sleeping or eating properly, and I nod and walk past him through hallways that feel like coming home, even though I've only been gone 4 days. Dante's office door is open, and he's sitting at his desk surrounded by files and laptop screens, and he looks terrible, like he hasn't slept since I left, dark circles under his eyes, and his shirt wrinkled and his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. He looks up when I enter, and for a moment, he just stares at me like he's not sure I'm real. And then he's standing and I'm crossing the room and we meet in the middle. I sign and speak at the same time, tell him I'm not leaving again. Not Sofia, not him. That this is my choice made with full knowledge of what it means. And I watch his carefully constructed walls crumble in real time. Watch this controlled, dangerous man break open with relief and need and love he's been trying not to feel. He tells me I shouldn't be here, that nothing has changed, that I'm still in danger, and I tell him I tried to leave, lasted 4 days before I realized I wasn't protecting myself, I was just being a coward. He says I'm the bravest person he knows, that I walked into his world with my eyes open, that I fought for his sister when she'd given up, that I made him want to be better, and I stop him there because I need him to understand something fundamental. I tell him I don't need him to be better, I need him to be honest. Ask him if he can promise me that. And he says always, even when the truth is ugly. And I believe him because Dante has never lied to me, has always shown me exactly who he is, even when it would be easier to hide. I sit down on the couch and tell him something I've never told anyone. About how when my father left after my mother got sick, I was so angry I tracked him down 2 years later. About how I was going to confront him, hurt him somehow, make him feel a fraction of the pain he caused us. I tell him about finding my father with a new family, a new life, normal and happy and completely moved on from us. And about how I sat in my car outside his house for 3 hours, debating whether to ring the doorbell or slash his tires or just scream at him in the street. I tell him I'm capable of darkness too, that I understand rage and the desire for revenge, that maybe that's why I understand him in ways other people can't. He looks at me like he's seeing me for the first time and says he thought I was all light, all goodness, and I laugh bitterly and tell him nobody is all anything. We're all mixed up combinations of light and dark, and the best we can do is choose which parts we feed. He sits next to me and takes my hand and tells me he has something to show me, and he pulls out files from his desk, federal case files with witness protection offers and immunity agreements and documentation of meetings with prosecutors that have been happening for months. He explains that he's been systematically dismantling the Bratva's operations in the city, not just for revenge, but to permanently remove the threat. And in the process, he's been feeding information to federal prosecutors about 5 rival organizations, building cases that will take down half the organized crime in the region. He tells me 3 more months is how long before he delivers everything they need. And then he's out, the businesses go legitimate. Sofia gets a normal life, and I realize he's been planning an exit this whole time, has been working toward a future that includes me even when he was pushing me away. I ask about us, about what happens to us in this plan, and he looks at me with vulnerability I've never seen before and says, if you'll have me, knowing I'll always carry this past, knowing some people will always see me as a criminal. I tell him I see him as the man who learned sign language in secret to connect with his sister, as the man who's trying to build something better, and that's enough for me. That's more than enough. We talk until dawn starts lightening the sky outside his windows. Honest conversation about what a future looks like, about the danger that won't completely disappear even after he's legitimate, about the moral compromises we'll both have to make, about the reality that his world doesn't offer normal and probably never will. He tells me about the businesses he's legitimizing, real estate and security consulting and import-export companies that are already mostly clean, about his plan to use his connections and knowledge for good instead of crime, about wanting to build something Sofia can be proud of. I tell him about my nonprofit dreams, about wanting to expand ASL education to underserved communities, about maybe finishing my linguistics PhD someday, about building a life that matters beyond just surviving, and he tells me he'll fund whatever I want to do, that money isn't an issue, and I have to explain that I need to build something myself, that I can't just be the mafia boss's girlfriend who gets everything handed to her. He understands this in a way I didn't expect him to, tells me he respects my independence, that he fell in love with my strength, not my need. And hearing him say he loves me out loud for the first time makes something in my chest crack open and spill warmth through my whole body. I tell him I love him too, have loved him probably since he learned sign language just to connect with Sofia, since he held me after the kidnapping with hands that were shaking, since he listened when I asked him not to kill Vincent, even though every instinct screamed for revenge. We kiss, and it tastes like coming home, like choosing each other with full knowledge of the cost, like building something real out of broken pieces. When we finally pull apart, the sun is fully up, and I hear movement in the house. Sofia waking up, and Dante and I go to her room together to tell her I'm back. She sees us in her doorway, and her face transforms, and she signs family doesn't leave with such certainty that I start crying. And then all three of us are holding each other and signing I love you in a tangle of hands and hearts. Sofia tells me in sign language that she learned video relay services from Marco's daughter who's deaf, that she's been practicing using technology, that she wanted to reach me but didn't know if I'd come back. And I sign that I'll always come back, that she's stuck with me now whether she likes it or not. She signs that she likes it very much, and then she signs to Dante that he looks less scary when he smiles, and he actually laughs. And the sound is so unexpected and genuine that it makes both Sofia and me grin at each other. The mansion feels different when I walk through it now, less like a fortress and more like a home. And I notice Sofia has put up Christmas decorations everywhere, lights and garland and a tree in the main hall, and she signs that she wanted it to feel festive for when I came back because she knew I would. Dante shows me around the security improvements he's made since the attack, explains the new protocols and safe rooms and guard rotations, and I listen because this is part of loving him, accepting that safety requires vigilance, that the threat might diminish, but never completely disappears. Marco pulls me aside at some point and tells me the boss has been impossible since I left, that he's grateful I came back, that the family needs me in ways that go beyond teaching Sofia, and I realize I've been adopted into something bigger than I understood, that the Moretti organization sees me as part of their structure now. Over the next few days, I settle back into life at the mansion, but everything feels more solid now, more chosen, less like I'm playing house, and more like I'm building a real life. Sofia's progress resumes slowly. She's still dealing with trauma from the attack, but she's communicating again, signing about her fears and her anger and her hope, and I work with her on processing what happened instead of burying it. Dante includes me in meetings about the federal case, shows me evidence he's gathering, explains the legal strategy, and I realize he's serious about transparency, about building a partnership where I know exactly what I'm choosing. One night, he tells me about the Bratva leadership being arrested in a coordinated federal raid, about how his information was key to the operation, about how the threat that's been hanging over us is finally neutralized, and I watch relief wash over his face like he's been holding his breath for months. He tells me the timeline is moving faster now, that legitimization might happen in weeks instead of months, that Sofia could start at a mainstream school after the holidays, that we could have something approaching normal life sooner than he thought. I tell him I'm not sure I want normal, that this complicated, beautiful mess we're building feels more real than anything I've had before, and he kisses me and signs that I'm the best thing that's ever happened to him. And I sign it back because it's true. Because loving Dante and Sofia has transformed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined 4 months ago when I drove up to this mansion for the first time. 3 months pass in a blur of transformation, winter melting into spring, and I watch everything change in ways I couldn't have predicted when I first drove up to this mansion, believing I was just taking a well-paying tutoring job. The federal case concludes with 5 crime families indicted on charges ranging from racketeering to murder, and Dante's testimony and evidence were the foundation of the entire operation. But his cooperation deal keeps his name out of everything publicly, lets him fade into legitimate business while his enemies go to prison for decades. The Bratva leadership is arrested in coordinated raids across 3 states, and the threat that hung over us like a dark cloud finally dissipates. And I watch Dante's shoulders lose tension he's been carrying for years. His businesses are fully legitimate now: real estate developments and security consulting firms, and import-export companies that operate in daylight with lawyers and accountants instead of enforcers and violence. And he's still powerful, still wealthy, still commands respect that borders on fear, but he's no longer criminal, and that matters more than I realized it would. I've moved into the mansion permanently, my small apartment given up without regret, and my clothes hang in the closet next to Dante's expensive suits, my books scattered throughout the house mixing with his collection of leather-bound classics, my life intertwined with his and Sofia's in ways that feel inevitable now. Sofia is thriving in ways that steal my breath when I stop to really look at her, enrolled in a mainstream high school with an ASL interpreter, making friends both deaf and hearing, talking excitedly about college plans and art programs, and a future that seems limitless. She's even begun speaking occasionally, her voice rusty from disuse but growing stronger, though she still prefers to sign, and I love that she's chosen ASL as her primary language, that she's claimed her deafness as identity rather than disability. The nonprofit ASL Education Center I run now operates out of a building Dante bought and renovated, serving underserved communities and training interpreters, and creating the kind of deaf education programs I used to dream about when I was drowning in my mother's medical debt. And having the resources to actually make a difference feels like a gift I'm still learning to accept. I tutor several deaf students now, including some of Sofia's friends, and watching her interact with other deaf teenagers, seeing her confident and expressive, and so incredibly alive, makes me believe in the possibility of healing even from profound trauma. The anniversary of my first lesson with Sofia falls on a mild April afternoon when the mansion gardens are blooming with tulips and cherry blossoms, and Dante has been planning something for weeks, disappearing for mysterious meetings with Marco and making phone calls in Italian when he thinks I'm not listening. I assume he's planning a small family dinner, maybe a gift for Sofia to commemorate how far she's come. But when I come downstairs that afternoon, the mansion is transformed. Decorations everywhere, and dozens of people filling the gardens, young people laughing and signing and speaking in the beautiful mixed communication style that happens when deaf and hearing cultures integrate. Sofia's friends are here, including several deaf students from her school, and there are balloons and subtle lighting designed to be visually interesting for deaf attendees, and music playing with heavy bass so everyone can feel the vibrations. And Sofia sees me and signs surprise. We're celebrating you and me and everything we built together. I'm overwhelmed in the best way, hugging Sofia and greeting her friends, and watching Dante move through the crowd looking more relaxed than I've ever seen him, smiling easily, signing greetings to the deaf students with the fluency he's developed over months of practice. Marco catches my eye and grins, tells me he never thought he'd see the boss. Sorry, Dante, looking this happy, and I laugh because I never thought I'd see it either. Never imagined this controlled, dangerous man could transform into someone who throws parties for teenagers and learns sign language and looks at me like I hung the moon. Sofia asks for everyone's attention in the way deaf events work, flashing the lights to get people to look, And then she starts signing a speech she's clearly prepared, and I move next to her to voice interpret for the hearing guests, my hands translating her words into spoken English while my heart swells with pride. She signs about how a year ago she lived in silence, not because she couldn't hear, but because she was afraid to be seen, afraid to connect, afraid to live in a world that felt too painful to engage with. She signs that her brother gave her a teacher, but Maya gave her a language and a life, that I taught her being deaf doesn't mean being broken, that I showed her how to be proud of who she is instead of ashamed. She signs that people think deaf means silent, but she's not silent. She has so much to say, and Maya helped her find her voice, not the one that makes sounds but the one that tells the truth. She signs that her brother hired a teacher, but what she got was a sister. And by the time she finishes, I'm crying, and half the people watching are crying too. And Sofia hugs me and signs I love you, and I sign it back and mouth thank you because I can't speak past the lump in my throat. The party continues for hours, teenagers eating cake and playing games adapted for mixed deaf and hearing groups, and I watch Sofia in her element, confident and expressive and surrounded by friends who communicate with her in her language, and I feel a deep satisfaction that has nothing to do with professional achievement and everything to do with love. As the sun starts setting, Dante finds me and takes my hand, leads me away from the party into the garden where a new fountain sits that I hadn't noticed before, water cascading over stone. And when I get closer, I see a plaque that makes my breath catch, dedicated to Elena Chen, who first taught her daughter the language of hands and hearts. I turn to Dante with tears in my eyes, and he signs that my mother should be here to see what I've built, that her legacy lives on in every student I teach, in every life I touch with the language she gave me. I tell him it's perfect, and he signs not yet, not quite perfect, and then he's taking both my hands in his and signing with movements that shake slightly, nervous in a way I've rarely seen him. He signs that I once told him maybe I was pulling him toward light, that I was right, that I am his light, me and Sofia both. He signs that I taught him a language, but more than that, I taught him how to open his heart again, how to believe in the possibility of family and love and futures that don't involve violence. He signs, "Will you make this family official? Will you marry me?" And he's pulling out a ring that catches the sunset light. And I'm nodding before he even finishes the question, because yes, in any language, yes. Always yes to this man and this life and this family we've built from broken pieces. I sign and speak my answer, tell him I was hired to teach sign language, but what I found was a family, a home, a love I didn't know I needed. Tell him yes, I'll marry him. Yes, I'll be his wife. Yes to everything. He slides the ring onto my finger and kisses me while the fountain dedicated to my mother plays behind us, and music from the party drifts through the garden, and the last light of day paints everything gold. When we walk back to the party hand in hand, Sofia sees the ring immediately and starts signing excited questions. And when we tell her we're getting married, she signs finally. "I've been waiting for this. You're so slow." And Dante and I both laugh because apparently our relationship has been obvious to everyone except us. The party winds down as evening falls and parents come to collect teenagers, and Sofia hugs each of her friends goodbye, signing promises to see them at school Monday. And I watch her be so incredibly normal, so beautifully ordinary in her teenage social life, and I'm grateful for every choice that led to this moment. After everyone leaves, the three of us sit in the garden watching the last colors fade from the sky, and Sofia signs perfect family with such contentment that Dante and I both sign it back, sign perfect and mean it, despite knowing we're all flawed and complicated and carrying trauma we'll probably always carry. But perfect doesn't mean without damage, doesn't mean without history or scars or moments of darkness. It means finding people who see all of you and choose you anyway, who build something beautiful out of broken pieces, who believe love is worth the risk even when the risk is significant. Marco finds us eventually and tells Dante there's a call he needs to take, business that can't wait, and I watch Dante's face shift slightly into the focused expression he wears when dealing with his companies. And I'm reminded that legitimate doesn't mean simple, that he'll always be powerful and connected and operating in worlds I don't fully understand. But he kisses me before he goes and signs, "I love you" to both me and Sofia, and I know that whatever business he's handling, he'll come back to us, that he's built a life where love and work can coexist instead of destroying each other. Sofia and I stay in the garden after Dante leaves, and she asks me in sign if I'm happy. Really, truly happy. And I tell her I've never been happier. That a year ago I was alone and drowning in debt and going through motions. But now I have a family and a purpose and a future that feels limitless. She signs that I saved her life, that without me she'd still be trapped in that silent prison she built for herself. And I tell her she saved mine too, that teaching her reminded me why I fell in love with sign language in the first place, reminded me that connection matters more than safety, or comfort, or the easy path. We talk about her college plans, about the art programs she's interested in, about her dreams of maybe becoming a deaf educator herself someday, of paying forward what I gave her, and I encourage all of it. Tell her she can be anything she wants to be, that her deafness is just one part of her identity, not a limitation on her potential. She asks about the wedding, and I realize I haven't even begun to think about planning, haven't processed that I'm engaged, that I'm going to marry Dante Moretti and become part of this family officially. And the thought fills me with joy and terror in equal measure, because marriage to him means accepting his past and his connections, and the reality that some people will always see him as a criminal, no matter how legitimate his businesses become. But I chose this with my eyes open, chose him knowing exactly what it means, and I don't regret it, won't regret it, because loving Dante and Sofia has given me something I thought I'd lost when my mother died, has given me family and purpose, and a reason to believe in the possibility of happiness. When Dante comes back from his call, he finds us still in the garden, and he sits down next to me and takes my hand, laces our fingers together like he needs the physical connection, and Sofia signs that we look good together, that she approves of this marriage, that it's about time her brother did something right. We all laugh and sit together, watching stars appear in the darkening sky, and I think about how a year ago, I drove up to this mansion not knowing my life was about to change completely, not knowing I'd find love and family and a sense of belonging I'd been missing since my mother died. The fountain dedicated to my mother plays softly behind us, and I imagine she'd approve of this choice, of me finding people who communicate in the language she taught me, of me building a life that honors her legacy while creating something entirely my own. Dante signs to Sofia that it's time for bed and she protests, but goes eventually, hugging us both and signing "Good night, I love you" with such casual affection that it makes my heart ache, and then it's just me and Dante in the garden, with the night air warm and promising around us. He tells me he's been thinking about the wedding, about whether I want something big or small, public or private, and I realize I don't care about any of that. I just want to marry him, want to make official what already feels true, that we're a family, that we belong to each other, that we've built something worth protecting. We talk about the future, about Sofia's college years, and my nonprofit expansion, and his plans to use his resources and connections for good instead of crime, about buying a house somewhere quieter maybe, somewhere Sofia can have a dog and a normal suburban life, about building something that looks nothing like the world Dante came from. He tells me he wants children someday if I do, wants to give Sofia siblings, wants to build a family that's based on choice and love instead of blood and obligation. And I tell him yes, I want that too, want everything with him. And we kiss under stars that witnessed my arrival a year ago, and now witness my commitment to stay forever. The night is warm and full of possibility, and when we finally go inside, the mansion feels like home in ways it didn't even a few months ago. feels like a place where laughter echoes, and love lives, and futures are built, instead of just a fortress against danger. I think about the title someone might give our story, something about the mafia boss who watched sign language lessons. And I smile because that's how it started, but it's not how it ends. It ends with three people who found each other against all odds, who built a family from broken pieces, who learned that love can bridge any divide if you're brave enough to try. Sofia signs perfect family and we sign it back. And in this moment with spring blooming outside and love blooming inside, I believe it. Believe we're exactly what we need to be for each other. Believe that sometimes the wrong world becomes exactly the right one when you find the right people to share it with.